Hi guys, what is going on, and welcome back to another video on New World. So we have just had a really interesting development blog released by Amazon Game Studios that really touches on PvP and some of the fairly fundamental changes that are occurring to it. So I kind of wanted to take a little bit of a look at that because I think it's going to be quite radical for a lot of people. I think it's going to upset quite a lot of people and probably please as many people as well because it's changing quite a lot. So firstly, let's just briefly cover what PvP has been like during the alpha and during sort of the previous year or so's testing. So New World's always been sort of set as this very brutal MMO sandbox survival game. And sort of with that there was a fully open world PvP. You know, no opt-in, no sort of safe zones bar the sanctuaries. If you went out, ventured into the open world, you could be killed by anyone, by any groups. And much like you could team up and kill anyone, or you could kill someone yourself, you can ambush people. It was a real, true, brutal PvP world. I guess the closest thing I could think for me like this is a little bit like EVE Online in that sort of once you're outside those safe zones, it's just a fully brutal open world. And I think that pleased quite a lot of people because it made for that real brutal experience, that real true open world experience. And not very many games really go in for that, not these days. Games tend to opt for the more safer option because it tends to please perhaps a wider audience of players. But I think this sort of open world sandbox brutality kind of interested quite a lot of people in the game from the beginning. But a lot of that has now kind of been changed. So with this development blog, they talked about sort of during the alpha, they didn't like the fact that a lot of players were sort of ganging up on newer players, were sort of ambushing people in groups, etc. And they really didn't like that. So they've kind of changed it to an opt-in style of PvP system. So they describe this as a system that's going to prevent more experienced or players who've put more hours into the game from targeting lesser experienced or lesser level players. And the idea is to kind of prevent this sort of plague griefing type thing. So I kind of get why they've gone in for that. I think they're worried about alienating new players or making it too much of a niche player base who's only interested in this really hardcore type game. But, I mean, that did kind of set the game apart. I think that is also what attracted in quite a lot of people. People liked the idea of this sort of brutal sandbox MMO. And I think by sort of going for this much softer PvP system, this opt-in system, then I think that's kind of a little bit of a shame. So kind of in the interview they gave accompanying the development blog, they also talked about the fact, it would technically be possible now to fully play this game without ever sort of touching on the PvP. So I suppose that's good if you're a crafter, if you're really just like the sort of the more softer, the PvE side of things, just want to deal with the monsters, etc., and don't want to touch into PvP at all. I guess that's a good thing. But for a lot of people, that'll kind of seem a shame. I mean, it's also changing kind of how the loot drops are working. So in the initial game, it was quite a brutal loot drop system. So if you died, you basically lost everything in your inventory except the stuff you had equipped, unless you flagged for to be an aggressor, and then you risk absolutely everything, including your equipment, when you engage in PvP. And there was also a criminal system to go along with this. So if you started to become a bandit, you got criminal points, and that flagged you and gave you negatives in towns, etc. But it made for quite a brutal system. If you spawn in and you've not got a lot of stuff, or you spend a couple of hours gathering stuff, and then someone throws a spear through your throat, obviously it kind of sucks a little bit. So they basically removed that entirely. So there's no longer any loot loss. So if you get killed, you basically just respawn, but further away, so you don't lose any of your equipment anymore. Maybe a slightly softer loot system isn't so much of a bad thing. I think when it's then used in conjoined with this opt-in PvP, it becomes too much. But maybe a slightly softer loot drop system isn't so bad. Supposedly, there's still going to be rewards for the players who actually achieve the PvP kill, but it doesn't specify if this is going to be sort of maybe a recreated items dropped in loot, or if it's just going to be an experience reward, etc. They don't really specify in the interviews. There's a little bit more to be learned there. They also mentioned that the criminal system has effectively just been completely removed from the game because of this opt-in PvP system. They didn't feel it was necessary anymore to have a criminal system because everyone involved in the PvP is going to be there optionally. Now, one of the only positive things I saw to come out of this opt-in system, which I did actually quite like, was the fact that they mentioned there's going to be bonuses for being PvP flagged. So I take this to mean if you take the risk, and PvP flag your character, then maybe you'll be, getting better loot drops from PvE monsters. Maybe you'll be getting a higher experience earn rate, higher gold drop rate, something like that. Which is a good thing. I mean, there's an encouragement for you to risk being PvP flagged. That's nice. I like that as an idea. I mean, I would also be interested to see how easily it is to turn on and off your PvP flag. For example, I would quite like to see a system where maybe you have to be, if you do PvP flag, then you are flagged for quite a long time. If you could be flagged maybe for the remainder of that week, then that is a much more acceptable system to me, because you then choose to be PvP flagged, and then you're in PvP, you stick there. Rather than just being able to turn it on and off every 30 seconds or something, as soon as you see someone you don't like, oh, I'm not going to be PvP flagged anymore. I think you should have to be sort of stuck into that system, so you're either in PvP or you're not. This kind of also nicely leads on to PvP-only servers. So they mention in the development blog that they have no intentions of doing PvP worlds, effectively. At least not at release. They do mention that maybe later on it will be something they consider. I kind of feel that's maybe a little bit of a mistake. They've just removed a lot of the PvP element, which I think is going to upset at least some of the players. I know some of the players will be pleased about it as well, but I think some players will be upset about the PvP changes. And to then say there's certainly going to be no PvP servers seems a bit of a shame. I think it would have been kind of a nice thing to maybe offer PvP servers as well, so then people kind of have the choice about the experience they want. But it seems like they've kind of ruled that out. So they then go on to talk about factions, factional war, and territory ownership, and kind of how that's going to work in the game. So it seems in their minds the factional war system and the territory wars type stuff is going to sort of be the replacement for a lot of the original open world PvP stuff. So from level 10 there's going to be factions you can join, and you're also going to be able to sort of form up into companies. And with these companies you can basically take land. So you can have up to 50 people sort of in a company, in a land battle. And you're going to be able to use these for sort of territory war stuff. So you're going to be able to seize and take land, and then other players are going to be able to declare war on your land and try and take it from you in the series of sort of pitched battles. And almost like siege battles, because you're going to have your encampment, it's going to be upgradable, you're going to have upgradable defences, as well as different crafting stations, etc., and all your sort of stuff's going to be in there. So they're going to be able to declare war on you, but it is going to be at appointed times. So there's not just going to be sort of a free-for-all, they declare war, and if you're not online at that time, it's just sort of tough. No, it's going to be, they declare war, and the war will be, tomorrow at 6 p.m. And so that's going to be determined by, probably by the defender's time that they want to be set, because you're going to set your war times as a company. So the idea is you're supposed to be grouping up with other people who get back at 6 p.m. Or if you will get back at 2 in the morning, you can form a group and you could set your time at 2 in the morning. So you're always going to be around to defend. And that kind of works quite nicely. I like that as a system. I don't think it's really a replacement necessarily for the open world PvP, but I think as a sort of territory war style system, as a land conflict and ownership system, I think that sounds kind of interesting. And I like the fact that they're going to incorporate it, with all the siege battle stuff. It's kind of exciting to me to hear about all the upgradable defences that you're going to be able to sort of put towers, put siege defences on. I think that's kind of cool, makes it upgradable, and I think it's going to make sort of owning and trying to hold land during these conflicts really quite fun. So that really sums up kind of most of the information we've been given from this development blog so far. Yeah, I think some people are going to be pretty disappointed with the PvP changes. I think that's kind of understandable. I think a lot of people were hoping for this sort of real brutal open world sandbox PvP game, and I think the game has shifted a lot since alpha. Kind of a lot more away from that. I think for me a lot of it depends on how they implement things like the flagging system, whether you can toggle it on and off instantly. I would also like to see maybe some zones where you have to PvP flag to go in. So if maybe heading into some of the corrupted territory, maybe that should be an open world PvP stuff. So there's that balance. So if you want to get some of the really high-end loot gear, if you really want to start to push into the corrupted territory, then you have to accept that you'll be PvP flag doing that. I think that would kind of make for an interesting environment, but also make it perhaps a little safer for some of the new players as well. So it kind of provides that slight balance. I think that's sort of things they need to look in and kind of work around, because I think there's going to be a real mixed bag of feedback from the community over this kind of. Some people were really upset over PvP changes, and some of the guys who enjoy PvE more being quite pleased about it. But anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Hopefully this was kind of interesting, and hopefully it's kind of informative to talk to you a little bit about what some of the PvP changes we have got coming on in the game. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, do subscribe to the video. Of course, do let me know what you think in the comments down below. And of course, I shall see you all on the next video.